Hi, and good morning from Trincomalee, my dear friends. I arrived here yesterday late afternoon, and stayed at the Alpha Guest Inn, which is conveniently located near Pelli Beach. And since this is also near to the city of Trincomalee, my mission today is to explore this surprisingly amazing port city, located here on the northeastern coast of Sri Lanka. But first, come and let's have a little breakfast together, at the Prini restaurant. The restaurant is just around the corner from my guest house. And they are serving very delicious, Asian and intercontinental breakfast, lunch and dinners, and all this for a very affordable price.
Hi. Morning. How are you today? Good. Starting to rain a bit already. So I better... It was already drizzling. No. Just now. Sun and drizzle. So I take breakfast before I go to the city. Okay. Chicken noodle? Yeah, like Sri Lanka spicy. Yeah. And what do you have? You have coffee?
Now let's head to the city of Trincomalee, and while I'm driving, I will try to explain a bit about the city of Trincomalee and its history. I learned that according to historical accounts, the original name of the city of Trincomalee was Gokana, and that it had functioned as a naval harbor already since the 6th century before Christ. It also served as a commercial port for the trade routes from the east to the west and vice versa. The harbor was so large, so that a good number of ships could be docked at all times. Gokana was also rich in resources, and was able to supply the merchants with plenty of clean water and other materials they needed for repairing their vessels, and more. The port is also in the proximity to the mouth of the Mahaweli River, and therefore allowing the local merchants easy access to the port via the river. This helped to increase the trade between the locals and the foreign merchants, and lifted the port to one of the most important harbors in the region. Later, in the 11th century Anno Domini, when the Chola Empire invaded Sri Lanka, their invasion was naturally here, through the Gokana port. They kept the region under their control until the year of 1070 Anno Domini, when they were expelled by then King Vijayabahu, who restored the Gokana port to its former glory, as a commercial trade point of importance, once again. However, later in the year of 1215 Anno Domini, the kingdom was once again invaded by Kalinga Maga, who then set up a fortress at Gokana, until he was overpowered by King Parakramabahu, who again reclaimed the port from these invaders. Aside from these invasions, there were also conflicts between the Sinhala kings and the Arya Chakravarti kings of Jaffna, and all primarily over the ownership of this port. After the 12th century, Gokana came under the control of the Arya Chakravarti kings of Jaffna, and it was then given the new name, which was in Tamil language, and called Trincomalee. The meaning in Tamil, for the word, Thiru, refers to the places of the Hindu religious worship places, that are built on hills, while the words, Kona, and Malai, refer to peaks and mountains, respectively. Later the Tamil name of Trincomalee eventually was anglicized and became Trincomalee, the name which is still in use, as of today. By the 15th century, the trade in the Indian Ocean was dominated by the Arab, the Indians, the Malays, and the Chinese merchants, trading in various items from spices to elephants. In the early 16th century a new force arrived. It was the Portuguese and their gun-mounted ships. These high-speed vessels, with their new and never-seen firepower, helped them to implement a new policy of control that began to undermine the region's long-standing and relatively open trade competition. Now arriving at Fort Frederick, which is also known as the Trincomalee Fort. The fort was built and completed in the year of 1624, Anno Domini, by the Portuguese. Sadly, before building the Trincomalee Fort, the Portuguese invader destroyed the world-famous ancient Hindu KWAM Temple, also called the Temple of 1,000 Pillars. That was towering on this very rock formation. They then used the temple debris to build their new fort, under the commands of the Portuguese governor, Constantino de Sá de Noronha, which reigned under King Philip III of Portugal, and the occupier of the Jaffna Kingdom and the Malabar country on the island. The fort was then captured by a Dutch fleet, under the command of Antony Kahn, in the year of 1639. And in the year of 1665, the new fort was built right here by the Dutch, to mainly defend against the advancements of the British and the French armies. Then in the year of 1795, when the French army occupied the Dutch Republic, during the War of the First Coalition, the fort was again taken over by the British, who then renamed it to Fort Frederick, and they then kept it until the year of 1948. And as of today, it remains a garrison by the detachment of the Gajaba Regiment of the Sri Lankan Army, and open to visitors. And here a bit about the KWAM Temple, located at the top of the Swami Rock, and inside the Fort Frederick. The temple is overlooking the beautiful Gokarna Bay, and is one of the most popular places of pilgrimage for the Hindu believers, here in Sri Lanka. The temple is dedicated to Lord Shiva and believed to be one of the Panch Ishwarams, the 5 abodes of Shiva in Sri Lanka, along with Kathishwaram, Munishwaram, Nagilshwaram and the now destroyed Tanavaram. The rock is also known as the Kailash of the South, as it lies on the exact same longitude as Mount Kailash in Tibet. The original temple was built on the summit of the rocky top, and skillfully carved and sculptured with hard black granite and classical temple bas reliefs by Indian temple architects and sculptors, and described as the 1,000-pillared temple, accompanied with many small shrines surrounding it. A 17th century stone inscription states that the temple began its history in the year of 1580 before Christ. Though this is unconfirmed, the truth remains that the ancient cave shrine that lies beneath the pinnacle of the mountain points towards a history that is predating the Sangam period of the 3rd century before Christ. It is also a confirmed fact that the KWAM was a well-established and popular temple during the arrival of the exiled Indian Prince Vijayan in the 6th century before Christ. However, the true rise of the temple occurred in the year 205 before Christ, when the Chola king, Alara Manu Nidi Cholan, built it as a vast temple city. and surrounded it by many smaller temples. But, as mentioned before, the temple complex was destroyed, between the year of 1622 and 1624, by the invading Dutch army. The restoration process of the new temple began after Sri Lanka's independence, and was completed by the year 1963, with many of the recovered old pieces being reinstalled again. Also, one of the interesting legends regarding this area is the story that celebrates King Ravana, who, when his mother was ailing, wanted to remove the temple of Koneswaram. And as he was lifting the rock, God Shiva made him drop his sword, and as a result of this, the very visible cleft was created in the rock, which until today is called the Ravana Vetu, and meaning the Ravana's cleft. Now coming back to Trincomalee's history. From the 15th to the 20th centuries, when the Gokana port was under the Portuguese, the Dutch and the British, it functioned mainly as a naval base. When the British took control from the Dutch, the Gokana port came under their authority, and it was said that this port is one of the best ports under their control at that time. William Pitt, the British Prime Minister during the early 19th century, had stated that Sri Lanka was the most valuable colony of the British Empire. And that was mainly because the Gokana port was so large, it could host all the ships of the British naval fleet in the east of that time. The Trincomalee harbor became so useful to the British during the Second World War, so much, so that even the Japanese army actually attacked this harbor in the year of 1942. And lately, the Trincomalee port was brought back into the political spotlight, because the Sri Lankan government planned to make a deal with the Indian government, where India had proposed a joint venture with Sri Lanka in handling 84 of the 101 oil storage tanks here in Trincomalee. Of course, this proposed venture was met with the opposition from the trade union of the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation. They perhaps rightfully fear that the Indian oil company will then monopolize the fuel industry in their own country. Nonetheless, the port may not be as commercially important as it was in the past, but even in today's political climate, the significance of the Trincomalee port cannot be underestimated.
So quick, eh?
As usual, I hope you enjoyed my little digging into the history of Trincomalee. And should I have made any errors, please do let me know, down here, in the comments section. And thank you already now in advance for any further additions you are able to provide. And now, last but not least, I am finally arriving here at the Pelli Beach, a great place to relax, and enjoy a walk on the sand beach and a swim in the clear sea. I find it a very nice and beautiful beach, but even then, some stretches of the beach are cleaner than others, but generally they really try to keep the beach nice and clean. And should you be one of the early birds, here you can enjoy watching the sun rising over the Bay of Bengal. It is said to be a spectacular show, seeing the sun emerging from the horizon and igniting the sky in all the beautiful morning colors that one can imagine. I am now on my way back, and as you can see, the rain took over once again, forcing me to have a small break before I am able to continue back to my guest house. Thanks for watching, and see you in my next episode, where I will continue my journey down south to the city of Batticaloa, a small town surrounded by lush green paddy fields, cool breeze, groves of trees, and lovely landscapes. So don't miss it, and thanks for subscribing, and seeing you back in my next episode of Sri Lanka Uncovered.